Hello and welcome to part 3 of my Wiremod tutorial series. In this tutorial I'll be explaining some things about inputs and outputs. A small heads up before we begin, I won't be showing much gameplay in this tutorial, possibly not anything. It'll mostly just be me doing voiceovers for a slideshow I made. If you think you know enough about inputs and outputs already, you can skip the tutorial, otherwise I recommend you stay around for the time it takes. And with that, let's begin. When talking about inputs and outputs, there are four main value types. There's number, there's vector, there's string, and then there's entity. I'll be explaining a bit about these, but a short explanation could be number is a simple number, vector is a collection of more numbers in one value, string is a line of text, and entity is an object. When talking about the number value, it can be any number. It can be decimal, it can be negative, it can be as high as you want, or it can be as low as you want. There is basically no limits, but it's only a single number. A vector is more complicated than a number. It works as if you put three numbers in a single value. It's written like parenthesis x, comma, y, comma, z, parenthesis end. An example could be 1, comma 50, comma 3. It's basically used for positions and other things. You can make 2D vectors, which consists of two values, an x and a y value. 3D vectors, which is the most common vector, which is x, y, and z. Or the 4D vectors, which is x, y, z, and a. A string is basically a line of text. It's marked by quotation marks or apostrophes. It's used for basic text things like names and such. An entity is basically an object. For example, everything on the map, every prop, every vehicle, every player is an entity. You use entity functions to identify whether an object is a player, if it's a prop, if it's a vehicle, or if it's something else. You can use it to determine if a player is alive, what a player's name is, and things like that. An input is the value an object takes. Some objects take certain inputs, while other objects take other inputs. Some objects take a single input, while other objects take multiple inputs. An example for an object that takes a single input is the turret. The turret only takes one input, which is a number. You can't give it a vector input since it can't use that for anything. When the number is greater than 0, the turret fires. If not, the turret stops firing. An example of an object that takes multiple inputs is the hoverball. The hoverball takes two number inputs, but it's still only numbers. So you can't give it a vector or a string since it can't use that. The first input is called hover mode, and it defines whether the hoverball is turned on or off. The second input is called C target, and it sets the height of the hoverball, so the hoverball will go to the height given by the input. An output is the value an object gives. Outputs can be the same value types as inputs, but they can be used unlimited. Some objects have single outputs, while other objects have multiple outputs. An example of an object that gives a single output can be the button. A button only outputs one value, a number, however the output can be used multiple times. For example, to make 5 different turrets fire with the press of a single button, or to activate several different devices at once. An example of an object that gives multiple outputs can be the GPS. The GPS outputs 4 values, 3 numbers and 1 vector. The 3 numbers is the x, y, and z value of the GPS separated, and the vector is all 3 values combined into a position vector. Each of these values can be used an unlimited amount of times. Gates are small chips you can use to manipulate or filter outputs. There are different kinds of gates for whatever you need, but I'll only cover some basic gates in this video. As I said, gates can be used to filter data, such as outputs. Gates usually take multiple inputs in form of numbers or strings. I'll show you 2 basic gates, the AND gate and the OR gate. The OR gate is a basic logical function. If at least one input is on, it outputs a value of 1. If all inputs are off, it outputs a value of 0. The AND gate is another logical function. It's kind of the opposite of the OR gate since it outputs 1 if all inputs are on, otherwise it outputs 0. Now you might be thinking, but what do I need these gates for? Well, the OR gate can be used to make multiple triggers for a single object, since every input only takes one output. This can come in handy if you want to make an elevator, a security system, or something the like. The AND gate can be used if you want multiple conditions to be true in order to trigger one object. This might be used for things like doors, which you need to activate from both sides, or something alike.